In a land marked by ancient feuds and deep-rooted enmities, two powerful families dominate the region with their values, pride and honor. On one side is the family of the young warrior, a clan respected for their bravery and loyalty. They are known for never forgetting an offense, perpetuating an animosity that spans generations. On the other side is the rival family, led by a ruthless man, whose daughter is the only light in his life full of shadows and grudges. These two families, although equal in strength and influence, live under a dark sky, where peace is a distant concept. They share a history of hatred and violence, a spiral of revenge that has become the essence of their existence. The mere fact of belonging to one of these families is already a reason for distrust and contempt, and the weight of this hostility falls on all its members, especially the youngest, who bear the burden of a legacy they did not choose. The young warrior grows up in the midst of this conflict, learning from an early age that the enemy is someone to be feared and hated. He trains hard, his heart shaped by the conviction that one day he will have to defend his family against the enemies that lurk in the shadows. His life is guided by this certainty, and he finds purpose in the weapons he carries and the battles he fights in the name of his lineage. But life, with its curious way of weaving destinies, takes him on an unexpected path. On a day that begins like any other, he finds himself far from the battlefields, in a dense forest, where the peace of the surroundings contrasts with the turmoil in his heart. He is alone, reflecting on the challenges that await him, when something catches his attention. A soft, almost imperceptible sound makes him turn his head. It is a laugh, sweet and clear as a bird's song, coming from somewhere ahead. Driven by curiosity, he follows the sound until he finds a young woman picking flowers in a small sunny field. She is a vision of tranquility and beauty, a figure who seems in total harmony with the nature around her. He stands still, watching her from a distance, unaware that his heart is already starting to beat faster. There is something about her that intrigues him, something he cannot understand, but that keeps him there, unable to look away. She, in turn, notices the presence of the stranger and looks up. Their eyes meet, and for a brief moment, the world around them seems to stop. She smiles, a simple and natural gesture, but it has a powerful effect on him. Without knowing who he is, without knowing his family history or the enmity that separates them, she sees him as a man, not an enemy. The young warrior feels a wave of confusion and internal conflict. He should walk away, should ignore this stranger and go on his way. But something stops him. There is a softness in her gaze, an innocence that he cannot associate with the hatred that his family harbors. For so long, he feels an inexplicable urge to get closer, to get to know her, even though he knows it is dangerous. When he finally moves towards her, the tension in the air is palpable. He is about to cross an invisible line, to cross a threshold that could change everything. They exchange a few words, make small talk, but each sentence spoken carries an emotional weight that neither of them can ignore. There is a connection, something deeper that forms between them, something that defies the logic of war and enmity. In this unexpected encounter, a bond is formed, still fragile, but full of potential. And as they say goodbye, returning to their respective realities, they both know, in their hearts, that something has changed. What begins as innocent curiosity is about to turn into a journey of love and conflict, where the rules of the past will be challenged and where emerging feelings will be tested by the fire of loyalty and duty. And so, the young warrior returns home, carrying a secret that is already beginning to weigh on him, unaware that this encounter will forever change the course of his life and that of the young woman who now occupies his thoughts. After that unexpected encounter in the forest, the young warrior cannot get the image of the young woman out of his mind. He tries to push the thoughts away, telling himself that she is just a stranger, an unknown person who, by chance, crossed his path. However, the memory of her smile, her soft voice, and the way her eyes sparkled in the sun continue to haunt him. Every detail of that moment seems to repeat itself incessantly in his mind, like a melody that he cannot stop hearing. He knows that he should focus on his mission, on his family, and on the long struggle that defines his life. Since he was little, he has been taught that loyalty to his family is the most important thing, that the enemy must be feared and fought, and that any sign of weakness can be fatal. But now, something new and unknown begins to take hold of his heart. A feeling he cannot understand, a force that pulls him irresistibly towards the young woman, despite everything he knows to be true. This feeling confuses him, consumes him. He finds himself torn between two worlds, on one side, his loyalty and duty to his family, and on the other, a newfound emotion that challenges his entire existence. He tries to convince himself that it is just a passing attraction, something that can be ignored and forgotten. But the more he tries to resist, the stronger this emotion becomes. At night, when silence reigns, he lies in the darkness and finds himself thinking about her. He imagines what it would be like to hold her in his arms, to feel the warmth of her body next to his. But immediately, the feeling of guilt invades him. How can he desire the daughter of his enemy? A woman who represents everything he was taught to fight against. He knows that his parents, his brothers, everyone in his family would never accept that. They expect him to be strong, to continue fighting for what is right in their eyes. During the day, he distracts himself with his training and his warrior duties, trying to stifle what he feels. But every time he sees a field of flowers, or hears a laugh in the distance, her image comes back, clear, as if she were right in front of him. He begins to isolate himself, avoiding the usual conversations with his companions, and begins to prefer solitude, where he can try to understand what is happening in his heart. The young woman, in turn, also cannot forget the stranger she met in the forest. She feels something different, something she has never felt before. There is a curiosity, a desire to know him better, to understand who he really is. But how can she allow herself these thoughts, knowing that he is probably part of the family that her father hates so much? She is raised to be loyal to her family, to honor her father's name, and to never betray his trust. However, she also feels the same inexplicable attraction, something that makes her feel alive in a way she has never felt before. She tries to resist it, but she can't help but dream about him, imagining what it would be like to see him again, to hear his voice, to feel his presence. She knows it is dangerous, that her father would never accept it, but the emotion is so strong, so overwhelming, that she begins to doubt her own ability to follow the rules that have been imposed on her. The young warrior begins to avoid family gatherings, afraid that someone will notice his internal struggle. He pretends to be focused on his tasks, but his mind is far away, always returning to that field of flowers and the young woman who now occupies his thoughts. He begins to question everything he has learned, everything he has been taught to believe. And although he tries with all his might to resist these feelings, he knows that something has changed in his heart. He begins to wonder if he can truly follow the path his family expects of him. Should he continue to fight this feeling? Or should he give in to this attraction, even though he knows it could destroy everything he knows? He feels lost, as if he is on the edge of an abyss, unable to see what awaits him on the other side. The internal struggle becomes more and more intense. He cannot find peace in his thoughts, and the conflict between duty and desire leaves him exhausted. He knows that with each passing day, it becomes harder to ignore what he feels. And as his attraction to her grows, the fear of the consequences becomes more and more real. He is torn between what he should do and what he wants to do, and this silent battle inside him consumes him, leaving him trapped in a whirlwind of emotions he never expected to feel. This is the beginning of a journey that will lead him to make difficult choices, where love and loyalty will clash in ways he could never have imagined. And although he tries to resist, destiny seems to have other plans for him, plans that will challenge everything he knows and believes. The days pass, but the thought of her does not leave him. He tries with all his strength to move forward, immersing himself in the duties and responsibilities of a warrior. But every moment of silence is filled with the memory of that first encounter, of that inexplicable connection. He realizes that resistance is useless. Something inside him calls him, pulls him towards her like an irresistible force, and he knows he cannot ignore it any longer. On a night when the moonlight softly illuminates the forest, he makes a decision that will change everything. With his heart racing and his mind full of doubts, he decides to meet her again. He knows he is taking an immense risk, that this encounter could be discovered and that the consequences could be devastating. But the desire to see her, to talk to her, overcomes any fear. He needs to know if she feels the same, if the connection he felt that day is real. Walking along the dark trails, he reaches the place where it all began. It's a small field surrounded by trees, the same place where he first saw her. He waits, his heart pounding, the sound of crickets filling the air around him. Each second feels like an eternity, and he begins to wonder if she will come, if it was foolish of him to expect her to feel the same. But then he hears a soft sound, the rustle of light footsteps in the grass, and when he looks up, she's there. She emerges from the trees like a dream, the moonlight reflecting off her hair, her eyes shining with a mixture of curiosity and something else, something he recognizes immediately. They approach in silence, as if any word could break the magic of that moment. When they finally stand face to face, the world around them seems to disappear, and there is only her, there, so close that he can feel her presence like a palpable force. At first, their words are hesitant, timid. They both know that what they are doing is dangerous, that this encounter is an affront to their families, to their histories. But the tension soon dissolves into soft conversations, quiet laughter, and furtive glances. Every word they exchange seems to deepen the connection between them, every shared smile fuels the flame that burns in their hearts. As the night progresses, they feel more at ease, the barriers that separate them begin to crumble. They talk about their lives, the dreams they have, the fears they face. She shares stories from her childhood, the expectations that weigh on her as the daughter of the leader of her family. He, in turn, speaks of the battles he has fought, the responsibilities he bears, and the dilemmas he faces as he finds himself torn between duty and desire. As they talk, the air around them seems to fill with a new energy, a mix of excitement and uncertainty. What began as a chance encounter begins to transform into something deeper, more meaningful. They realize that they are not just two strangers who met by chance, there is something more, a connection that grows with each moment they spend together. The young warrior feels that the more time he spends with her, the harder it becomes to imagine his life without her. Every word she says, every smile she offers, only makes him fall deeper in love. He tries to stay sane, reminding himself of who she is, of what their families represent. But his heart, stubborn and indomitable, has already made its decision. He wants her, no matter the cost. And she, in turn, feels the same. The initial fear of being discovered, of betraying her family's trust, begins to fade as she spends more time with him. She finds herself longing for these encounters, longing for their conversations, for his presence. Her world, once so certain and predictable, now seems to be turned upside down, and she cannot imagine going back to her old life, as if nothing had happened. As their love grows, so do the risks they take. Each encounter is a dangerous dance, a game of hide-and-seek with fate. They know that if they are discovered, the result will be devastating for both of them. But love, that overwhelming feeling, blinds them to the consequences. They are willing to risk everything, to defy all conventions and rules, just to be together. These secret encounters become the center of their lives, a refuge where they can be themselves, away from the watchful eyes of their families. Each night they spend together strengthens the bond between them, making the idea of being apart seem more and more unthinkable. Love, once a shy flame, now burns brightly in their hearts, illuminating the path they know they must follow, no matter what the future holds. And so, in the darkness of the night, with only the moon as a witness, two hearts that should be enemies become one, intertwined by a love that defies fate and ancient enmities. They know that the path ahead will be difficult, full of obstacles and dangers, but as long as they are together, they are willing to face any challenge. The love that grows between them is not just a passing emotion, it is a powerful force, capable of changing the course of their lives and, who knows, even the fate of their families. The passion that grows between the young warrior and the enemy's daughter is like a fire that they can no longer control. However, with each clandestine encounter, the risk of being discovered also increases. The two lovers are aware that they are living in a dangerous game, where each false step could be their last. But, blinded by desire and love, forbidden, they continue to meet in the darkness of the night, far from the eyes that could destroy them. One day, the young warrior returns home after one of these encounters. His mind is filled with memories of his beloved, the scent of her flowers still clinging to his clothes, the sound of her laughter echoing in his ears. He feels torn between the ecstasy of those moments and the guilt that begins to weigh on his heart. Every time he leaves her, it is as if a part of him is being ripped away. And at the same time, the guilt of betraying his family's trust consumes him. He tries to hide his feelings, to maintain the facade of loyalty and devotion to his family. But the tension begins to reflect in his eyes, in his hesitant gestures. He avoids eye contact with his parents, fearing that with a simple look, they could see what is in his heart. The lies accumulate, small evasions that turn into an unbearable burden. And the weight of the secret he carries slowly crushes him, with each passing day. On the other hand, the young woman also begins to feel the impact of her decision. She finds herself trapped in a labyrinth of emotions, where love and fear mix in an overwhelming way. She tries to maintain normality in her life, smiling at her father and fulfilling her obligations, but her heart is far away, always returning to the young warrior who waits for her in the darkness. She feels the weight of betrayal, but also the irresistible force of the love that consumes her. The secret they share becomes an increasingly difficult burden to bear. Each day that passes without being discovered feels like a small victory, but it also increases the feeling that the end is approaching. They know that they cannot go on like this forever, that something will have to change. But what? How could they, two souls trapped in a web of conflicting loyalties, find a path that does not end in disaster? Meanwhile, suspicions begin to arise. Small signs that had previously gone unnoticed now seem to draw attention. A lingering look, an unspoken word, an absent smile, everything begins to raise questions. And the lovers' worst fear begins to take shape. The secret they have so jealously guarded is about to be revealed, and the consequences could be devastating. One day, as the young warrior prepares for yet another encounter, he is confronted by his older brother. At first, the brother seems calm, but there is a noticeable tension in his voice, a concern he cannot hide. He mentions the nights the young man has disappeared, the poorly worded excuses, the weariness evident in his eyes. He asks directly what is happening, demanding an answer. The young warrior feels panic rising within him. He tries to disguise it, to invent an excuse, but the words seem to be stuck in his throat. He realizes that he is cornered, that he can no longer run away from the truth. And at the same time, the fear of losing everything he has. The secret he has built with his beloved paralyzes him. He knows that if he confesses, he will be betraying both his family and the woman he loves. But continuing to lie seems equally impossible. The brother, sensing the internal conflict, approaches him more closely, trying to get to the truth. He talks about the importance of loyalty to the family, about the sacrifices everyone has made to maintain the honor of the clan. He reminds the young warrior of his duty, of the responsibility he bears as part of such an ancient and respected lineage. But behind the words of concern, there is a veiled threat, a warning that patience has its limits. The young woman, in turn, begins to notice changes in her father. He seems more vigilant, more attentive to her movements. She notices that he watches her more often, as if he is looking for something. Every time she leaves the house, she feels his eyes on her back, and the feeling that she is being followed begins to grow. She tries to act normally, but the tension consumes her, and the fear that her secret will be discovered begins to dominate her. They both know that they are playing with time, that every minute they spend without being discovered is both a gift and a curse. They find themselves on the edge of a precipice, with the abyss of disaster looming before them. The attraction between them, which once seemed like a powerful and unstoppable force, now feels like a current that drags them inexorably towards destruction. The young warrior feels the pressure growing, as if the world around him is about to collapse. He knows that he must make a decision, that he cannot continue this dangerous game for much longer. But what is the right choice? To follow his heart and risk everything? Or to renounce love in the name of duty and honor? She, too, feels the weight of the inevitable. Every step she takes brings her closer to a confrontation with the truth, a truth that could destroy not only her, but everything she loves. But the thought of losing the young warrior, of never feeling the warmth of his arms around her again, is unbearable. And so, the two lovers continue on their uncertain path, ever closer to the moment when they will have to face reality. They know that the secret they share is about to be revealed, and when it does, nothing will be the same again. The love that unites them is powerful, but will it be strong enough to survive what is to come? The inevitable finally arrives. The young warrior feels that the pressure around him is becoming unbearable. Each encounter with his beloved is surrounded by a growing fear, as if the darkness of the night is no longer enough to protect them from the watchful eyes. He knows that the time they have spent together so far has been a gift, but also a countdown to the moment when everything will be exposed. The internal conflict he faces is overwhelming. Loyalty to his family binds him like a heavy chain, while love for them drives him to keep risking everything. He finds himself at an emotional crossroads, where every choice seems to lead to the destruction of something he holds dear. And then, the fateful day arrives. The young warrior's father, a man of few words but an imposing presence, calls him in for a talk. The father watches him with hard eyes, as if he can see through the layers of secrets his son carries. The young warrior knows this moment was inevitable, but that doesn't make it any less terrifying. He feels the weight of the expectations, respect, and honor that have been instilled in him since he was a child. The father begins to speak, his voice calm but heavy with gravity. He mentions the changes he has noticed, the nights the young man disappears without explanation, the restlessness in his eyes. Each word is like an arrow that strikes the young warrior's heart, for he knows he is on the verge of being unmasked. The father asks him directly if there is something he needs to know, something his son is hiding. The young warrior feels panic rising within him. He tries to remain calm, to disguise his emotions, but the impending confrontation puts him in an impossible situation. He considers lying, making up a story that might allay suspicion, but he knows he can't keep up this facade for much longer. And besides, what he feels for her is too real, too deep, to be denied. The tension is palpable, each second drags on as if time is playing tricks on them. The father continues to press him, not with anger, but with a firmness that only increases the young warrior's anguish. He mentions the responsibilities his son has, the duty to his family, and the honor that must be maintained at all costs. The young warrior listens, but his mind is elsewhere, torn between love and duty. And then, in a moment of pure emotion, he gives in. The secret he has kept for so long, the forbidden love he shares with his enemy's daughter, bursts forth before he can stop himself. He confesses everything to his father, his voice shaking, his heart pounding. Each word that leaves his mouth seems to bring a fresh wave of pain and relief, as if he is finally freeing a part of himself that has been trapped. The silence that follows his confession is almost unbearable. His father watches him, his expression impenetrable, as if he is processing the enormity of what he has just heard. The young warrior feels as if his entire world is hanging by a thread, waiting for the verdict of the man he respects above all else. He does not know what to expect: anger, disappointment, perhaps even outright rejection. But what he feels most of all is the fear that this secret will destroy everything he knows. His father finally breaks the silence. His voice is softer, but still carries the weight of authority. He speaks of the consequences of this forbidden love, of what it could mean. Mean for both families, for their future. He doesn't shout, he doesn't scold, but the pain in his words is evident. He mentions the battles that have been fought, the lives that have been lost, all in the name of a feud that has lasted generations. And now, his own son is about to destroy what remains of this fragile peace. The young warrior feels each word like a blow, but he also knows that he can't go back. The love he feels is real as the blood that runs through his veins. He tries to explain, to talk about the connection he has with her, about how this is not just a whim or a passing passion. But each argument he makes seems insufficient in the face of the reality that his father presents. Meanwhile, the young woman also faces a confrontation. Her father, the respected and feared leader of her family, begins to suspect that something is wrong. She notices the look he gives her, the tone of his questions, as if he is trying to extract from her a secret that she is not ready to share. She tries to keep up the facade, to act as if nothing is happening, but the weight of the truth weighs on her. She knows that if her father finds out, the consequences will be dire. Not just for her, but for the young warrior she loves, and for both families trapped in a cycle of hatred and revenge. Every day that passes without the truth being revealed is a bitter victory, for she knows she is only delaying the inevitable. They are both caught in a web of conflicting loyalties and feelings, where there are no easy answers. The young warrior and his beloved know that the path ahead is uncertain, full of danger and sacrifice. But as their hearts beat for each other, they continue to fight against the forces that try to tear them apart, even as they know that the final confrontation may be closer than ever. The love that binds them is powerful, but the forces that surround them are even more relentless. And now, with the secret about to be revealed, they both face the painful reality that the path they have chosen could lead them to ruin. But despite the fear and uncertainty, they know they can't go back. The love they share is all they have, and they are willing to fight for it, even if it means defying everything they know. The news spreads like wildfire, devastating everything around them. The revelation of the forbidden love between the young warrior and the enemy's daughter falls like a bomb between the two families. The dishonor is as intense as the hatred that has separated these bloodlines for generations. It is as if a silent pact of destruction has been activated, and now, nothing seems able to stop the approaching storm. The young warrior feels the weight of the choices he has made, increasingly suffocating. He knew this moment would come, but nothing could prepare him for the brutal reality that unfolds before his eyes. His father, devastated by the betrayal that he sees not only as an affront. Pesol, mas como uma amica a sobrevivencia de sua familia, se torna uma figura de ira e tristeza. A dor e a furia no olhar de seu pai são como lâminas que cortam profundamente, deixando cicatrizes que talvez nunca se curam. Ao mesmo tempo, a jovem sente o mundo desabar ao seu redor. Seu pai, outrora símbolo de força inabalável, se mostra implacável sua raiva. Ele a acusa de traco, determinado o nome de família como o sangue do inimigo. A dor suas palavras é evidente, mas há algo ainda mais aterrorizante. A determina que suas alhas de reparar o que considera erro imperdoável. Ela ve o pai se transformar estranho, alguém disposto a tudo para proteger a honra de sua linhagem, mesmo que isso signifique destruir o amor que ela guarda no coração. Os dois amantes, agora cientes de que o mundo está se fechando sobre eles, tentam encontrar momento de paz meio ao caos. O jovem guerreiro, sabendo que cada dia que passa é presente roubado, arrisca tudo para vê-la uma última vez. Ele sabe que o encontro é perigoso, que há alhas todos os lugares, mas o desejo de vê-la é mais forte que qualquer medo. Eles se encontram lugar que, para eles, sempre foi seguro. Refugio escondido das turbulencias que amicum destruirlos. Mas agora, mesmo esse lugar parece carregado de presságios sombrios. A lua caia illumina a noite, lancando sombras que dancam ao redor deles, como se o próprio su estivesse testemunhando a tragédia que se desenrola. Aos verum, o tempo parece parar. Els se abracam com a força de quem sabe que essa pode ser a última vez, cada toque carregado de uma intensidade quase desesperada. As palavras que trocam são poucas, mas carregadas de emoco. Ela olha nos olhos dele, buscando uma promessa, uma esperança de que ainda possam ter futuro juntos. Ele, por sua vez, tenta encontrar palavras que a confortam, mas sua mente está dividida entre o desejo de protegê-la e o terror das consequências que se aproximam. Eles falam sobre fugir, sobre encontrar lugar onde o odio de suas famílias não possa alcançá-los. Mas ambos sabem que isso é uma ilusão, que o passado os seguirá onde quer que veio. Ainda assim, o desejo de tentar, de desafiar o destino, é forte. O amor que sentem pelo outro é a única coisa que parece real meio ao caos que se desenrola suas vidas. Mas o medo também está presente. Eles sabem que, ao serem dali, a realidade voltará a envolvê-los como manto sufocante. A jovem sente o pânico crescer dentro de si, ela se agarra a ele, tentando absorver cada detalhe de seu rosto, cada sensação de estar seus braços. O jovem guerreiro, por sua vez, sente o peso de responsabilidade sobre seus ombros. Ele quer protegê-la, mas como pode fazer isso quando tudo ao seu redor está desmoronando? Eles se beijam, e o beijo é uma mistura de amor e desespero, como se estivessem tentando capturar a essência de tudo o que viveram juntos único momento. Mas a amargura de despedida iminente se infiltra cada gesto, cada palavra não dita. Eles sabem que não há longer, that the world outside that refuge awaits them with its sharp claws, ready to tear apart any hope they still have of being together. Finally, the young warrior takes her hands, looking deeply into her eyes. He promises her that he will do everything he can to protect her, but there is a sadness in his voice that she cannot ignore. She senses that, as much as he wishes, there are forces greater than them at play, forces that may be too relentless for them to overcome. They part, but their hearts are still intertwined, pulling each other even as their bodies begin to move apart. Each step he takes towards the exit is like a knife spinning in his chest, and he knows that, as he crosses that forest, he will be entering a battlefield where love may have no place. She, in turn, watches as he disappears into the darkness of the night, trying to hold back the tears that threaten to overflow. She knows that she cannot show weakness, that she must be strong to face what is to come. But the pain of seeing him go, of knowing that this could be the last moment they share, is almost unbearable. The young warrior walks back to his reality, his heart heavy with the pain of what is to come. Each step is a reminder that the time they spent together, as intense and true as it was, may not be enough to survive what is to come. He feels the shadows of fate closing in around him, and although he is determined to fight, he knows that the battle he faces is against forces that may be beyond his control. The young woman, now alone, feels the silence around her become deafening. She tries to calm herself, her breath coming in short gasps as tears finally stream down her face. She knows she needs to be strong, but the pain of separation is like a poison spreading through her veins. The future is uncertain, and the fear of what is to come is almost paralyzing. Both, on their respective journeys, know that the love they share is powerful, but will it be enough to withstand what is to come? Doubt plagues them, but at the same time, there is a spark of hope, a small flame that refuses to be extinguished. They know that the fight is not over yet, and as long as there is a chance, however small, of being together, they will continue to fight, against everything and everyone. The night is heavy with a tension that seems to suffocate the air. The young warrior and his beloved know that the final confrontation is about to happen. The days leading up to this moment are like a blur of conflicting emotions and difficult decisions. They feel like time is running out, as if each second takes them closer to an abyss from which they cannot escape. He is in his camp, preparing for what will undoubtedly be the most difficult battle of his life. It is not just a physical fight, but an internal battle, where his heart and soul are fighting to overcome the dangers of his life. His mind is at war. He arms himself, each piece of his armor placed with precision, but his thoughts are far from there. He thinks about her, about his beloved, and how she is facing the same fate as he is. Is she also struggling with fear, with uncertainty? He knows that the decision he must make could determine not only the future of both of them, but the fate of their families and of an entire people. He thinks about his father, who raised him to be strong, to fight and win, but who has now become his greatest enemy. The disappointment in his father's eyes haunts him, a constant reminder of the price he is paying for loving the daughter of his enemy. His father, who prepared him for war since he was a child, could not understand that this battle is different, that the enemy is not someone he can simply defeat with brute force. The real enemy, he realizes, is the hatred that divides their families, the resentment that has fueled the flames of conflict for generations. Meanwhile, the young woman is in her room, isolated from the world, but not from her own thoughts. She feels the weight of what is about to happen like a dark shadow hanging over her. Her father, with his unwavering determination, demands that she choose between loyalty to her family and the love she feels for the young warrior. For him, the choice is obvious: the family honor must be maintained at all costs. But for her, the love she feels is as real as life itself. She finds herself faced with a decision that could destroy not only herself, but everything she has ever known. She thinks about the young warrior, about their times together, and how much he means to her. Their love is a beacon of hope in a world that seems destined for darkness. But the reality that surrounds them cannot be ignored. She knows that if she chooses love, she will be betraying her family, putting at risk everything her father and ancestors have built. And yet, she feels that she cannot deny what she feels, that true love is something worth fighting for, even if it means defying everything she knows. Both, in their respective preparations, feel the weight of the choices they are about to make. He knows that by going into battle he is risking not only his life, but the future of his love. She knows that by making a decision, she may be sacrificing everything that is important to her. The coming clash is more than just a fight between enemies, it is a fight between love and duty, between the desire for a future together and loyalty to their families. And then, the moment finally arrives. They meet on the battlefield, not as lovers, but as adversaries. The troops on both sides line up, weapons drawn, ready to follow the orders given. But for them, the war has been going on for a long time, a war that has been fought in their hearts and minds. He looks at her across the field and feels a deep ache in his chest. How can he fight against someone he loves more than his own life? She, in turn, feels her heart beat faster when she sees him. He is there, standing in front of her, not as the man she loves, but as a soldier who could be their mortal enemy. They know that at the end of this day, nothing will be the same. But before the battle begins, something unexpected happens. The words that are spoken by both of them echo across the field, words filled with pain, regret, but also with unshakable love. They cannot avoid what is coming, but they also cannot simply ignore what they feel for each other. What was once just a whisper now becomes a scream. They cannot continue living a life based on hatred and revenge. She takes a step forward, looking at her father, and the words that come out of her mouth are like a blow. She speaks of love, of the desire to find a different path, to break the cycle of violence that has bound them for so long. Her father watches her, incredulous, unable to understand how his daughter could be saying such things. But she does not stop. The love she feels is real, and she is willing to fight for it, even if it means defying the man who raised her. The young warrior, upon seeing her take such an action, feels a mixture of pride and fear. He knows that this could mean the end, but he also sees in her the courage that he himself wishes he had. He too steps forward, declaring his intention to fight for a future where love prevails over hate. His father, however, sees this as an unforgivable betrayal, an act that cannot be tolerated. The battlefield is silent, everyone watching as these two young men, from opposing sides, approach each other, not to fight, but to try to find a solution that will prevent the impending tragedy. The tension is palpable, each look filled with expectation, each breath suspended in the air. But what will become of their future? The decision they are about to make could change everything, but what is at stake is more than just their lives, it is the fate of two families, of a legacy that spans generations. They know that what lies ahead will not be easy, that the road ahead is full of danger and uncertainty. But the love they feel for each other is what drives them, what gives them the strength to face what is to come. With their hearts racing and their eyes fixed on each other, they prepare for the final decision. The battle has not yet begun, but the first blows have already been struck, not with swords or spears, but with words and feelings that defy everything they have been taught to believe. The fight for love, for the hope of a future together, continues, even when everything seems to be against them. At the height of the confrontation, when all the words have been said and intentions revealed, the decisive moment finally arrives. The two young people stand face to face, and the weight of choice. The choices they must make are overwhelming. The battlefield is silent, as if fate itself is holding its breath, waiting for the decision that will change everything. The young warrior looks into his beloved's eyes, seeking the courage that only love can provide. He knows that this choice is not just about them, but about a legacy of hatred that must be broken. Every fiber of his being wants to grab her hand and run away to a place where they can live in peace, but the reality around them is relentless. She, in turn, feels her heart racing. She never imagined that loving someone would put her in such a difficult decision. Her mind is conflicted, torn between loyalty to her family and the love she feels. Her father's gaze weighs on her like a shadow, but the eyes of the young man before her shine with a hope that she cannot ignore. They know that there is no turning back. The choice they make now will determine the future of both of them, and possibly the fate of their people. It is a decision fraught with sacrifice, where love and duty collide at a crossroads of no return. With their hearts in their throats, they prepare to make a decision, aware that the path they choose could lead them to salvation or ruin. At the final moment, the two young men stand before everyone, their hearts racing and their emotions running high. The silence that envelopes the battlefield is almost deafening, and everyone present knows that they are about to witness something decisive. The love that unites them is strong, but the pressures of family, past and tradition are like walls that seem insurmountable. The young warrior, with his eyes fixed on his beloved, finally makes a decision. He lowers his sword, letting it fall to the ground with a dry sound that echoes across the field. He is willing to give up the fight, to renounce violence and to give up everything for her. His gaze says it all, he chooses love, above any rivalry or resentment. It is a gesture that surprises everyone around, including her own father, who looks at him in disbelief. When she sees his gesture, she feels tears streaming down her face. Without hesitation, she runs towards him, crossing the line that separates them. Amidst so much uncertainty and chaos, she makes the choice to follow her heart. The two embrace in the center of the field, a gesture of unity that silences any opposition. Their families watch, divided between pride and fury, but unable to interfere in what is happening. At this moment, they do not know what the future holds, but the choice has been made. Love, after all, prevails. Subscribe to our channel for more incredible love stories.